So, all right. So, we quick review of yesterday, and then we'll go on. Hold on. Someone chatted me saying probably that someone's late. Oh no. Okay. All right. Okay. So let us review Eliphaz. So Eliphaz made the following point to Iyov to explain why he was why Iyov suffered and had all those losses. So first is he said something very insensitive. Don't be a wimp. God just grazed you. You got to stay strong and set an example. Number two, he says you were really just serving Hashem for reward all this time, and since your service of Hashem wasn't pure, that's why he punished you. Number three, if you had been totally righteous, then you wouldn't have been punished. So it must be that you had sinned. Okay. Four, how do I know I'm right? Because I got a nevuah, or I got some sort of mystical vision. Number five, no one can expect to be totally righteous, not even the angels. Hashem finds faults in the angels. So how can you claim to be more righteous and to say that you don't deserve any punishment? Six, God is doing this for your own benefit. Therefore, you should be grateful because he's sparing you from future suffering. And then finally, if you do tshuva, God will restore you. So the basic argument was, why are you suffering? Because you sinned. Okay, any leftover questions on this before we go to Iyov's response? You want to predict how Iyov is going to respond? Let me go back to these points. How would you respond if you were Iyov?
If God was really punishing me, like for something that I did wrong, then he wouldn't punish me this harsh.
Ah, good. Okay, good. That's the very, very good argument. And we're going to see he does make that argument. What else? Okay, let's read and find out. So I sent this to you in case you wanted to print it out. But again, we're doing the same approach we did last time. We're going to read it in English and then summarize each point as we go. Okay, who wants to start us off today reading? Actually, Leah, why don't you start off? Because I think he starts off with your point.
Okay, sure.
Or something related to your point. Yeah, go ahead.
Iyov then answered, saying, if my anger and my shattered spirit were to be weighed opposite each other on a scale, would they balance equally? Surely my shattered spirit would weigh more than the sands of the sea. That is why my words sound rash. For arrows of the Almighty have pierced me. My spirit drinks their poison. Their terrors of God continue to be arrayed against me. Does the wild donkey bray in his pasture? Does the ox low in complaint over its mixture of fodder? Saying, can I eat this bland, unsalted food? Is there any taste this thick muck of vegetation?
All right, there's more. We'll go on in 1 second. I just wanted to call your attention to number 4. For the arrows of the Almighty have pierced me, and my spirit drinks their poison. He's saying that in response to which statement of Eliphaz? How did Eliphaz characterize the blow that Hashem dealt to Iyov?
Like not that bad, just grazed you.
It grazed him, right? He's saying, no, the arrows didn't graze me, they pierced me, you know. Okay, go on, Leah.
Yet my spirit detests touching the loathsomeness that oozes from my bread. If only my plea would come before God and he could fulfill my hope. If only God were willing to crush me, to withdraw his supporting hand and simply destroy me. How can his lack of mercy console me? I tremble with the plea that he show no mercy, for I have never disregarded the words of the Holy One. What strength do I possess that I can wait? Even if I were to prolong my life, what end is there for me? Is my strength the strength of stone? Is my flesh made of brass?
Very good poetic reading, by the way. Okay, then one more, and then we'll summarize.
And now examine me anew. It may appear to you that I am fraudulent. Please reconsider. You will find no wrong. After that, reconsider once again, and you will see that righteousness is still within me. Is there deceit on my tongue? Does my palate not discern iniquity?
Okay, good. So this is the first part of his response, and he's really making 2 points here. Okay, point number 1 is restating his claim that he's a tzaddik, right? He's saying that you, Eliphaz, claim that Hashem will not destroy a tzaddik. Well, guess what? I am a tzaddik, and I've been totally pierced and destroyed and crushed by Hashem. Okay, so he's reasserting his claim to be a tzaddik, and truth is, like, Eliphaz can't really, like, they can't. No one can win this argument because Eliphaz is going to keep on saying the fact that you're suffering is proof that you sinned, and he was going to keep on saying, no, I didn't sin. So therefore, the proof that the fact that I'm suffering is not proof of anything. And then this is the point that Leah made is you're saying that I should do tshuva. Well, this punishment has caused me so much pain and suffering that I can't do tshuva in this state. In other words, if Hashem, let's say, like took away his property, so then maybe you can say that that wouldn't have been bad enough for him to not do tshuva. But Iyov can't even like move, like he's stuck with his boils and stuff like that, and he's in the depths of grief. So he's saying, if you're claiming this is a punishment, it's a punishment that's gone overboard. It's like, even if you said, for example, that corporal punishment was acceptable, that a parent has the right to like smack a child's hand. If there's a certain point where it crosses the line and the punishment is so much that the child cannot recover or cannot learn from it, and at that point you would say that it's not serving its purpose. Okay, so that's Iyov's first response to Eliphaz. Any questions on that? We good? Okay. All right, next. How about Emily?
Yes, I can totally read. Sorry, I have to move the box. Okay. Do I not have sufficient resources within me? Why was prophetic wisdom withheld from me and given to one who intimidates his friends with shame in order to strengthen their fear of the Almighty? My brothers have betrayed me like a frozen stream and like the melting stream's tributaries and vanished. Until now, all of you friends were there for him, but when you saw him shattered, you became frightened.
Okay, now think about what Eliphaz said to Iyov and think to yourself, what is Iyov saying, or what is he responding to? Like what aspect of Eliphaz's claim is he responding to here?
That he has like heard this idea in like a prophetic vision.
Right. Okay, so how is Iyov responding to that?
Like, I'm so much better than you, and I didn't get a prophetic vision.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're telling me that God destroyed me and then gave you a vision about why this happened to me. Right? That's ridiculous. Why was it withheld from me? Like, God should have told me this, And then what is he accusing his friends of? Or what is he?
Him when he needed them.
Say again?
Abandoning him when he needed them.
Yeah,
most.
exactly. Right. So he's saying, so first of all, he's saying that you guys claim that you're here to comfort me, but you've really betrayed me. All you're doing is just like, what did he say in the actual thing? Hold on. You're intimidating me with shame. You've betrayed me like a frozen stream. Okay. Sorry about that. Just 1 second. Oh, and I guess I didn't include the part about the vision, but that's the other point he's making is that why, if you're claiming that God gave you a vision to explain my suffering, why didn't he give that vision to me? That would have been much more helpful. So this is criticizing their insensitivity also. And he said at the end here, I also didn't incorporate this into the summary, but he said, he says him, but he's speaking in first. He's really talking about himself. When I got struck, you guys became intimidated or frightened. Let me just go back to that a second. He says, until now, all of you friends were there for him, but when you saw him shattered, you became frightened. What do you think he means that they became frightened when they saw his state of suffering or being shattered?
Like, they're not any better. You're telling me to do tshuva for this, but like you can't even be.
So that's interesting. I mean, that's definitely an implicit critique, but what is he saying that they became afraid about when they saw his state of destruction and suffering? And you might have to think about this in like real world terms outside of Iyov. Like if there was a person who had a reputation of righteousness and then he suffered something as badly as Iyov, what fear might that awaken in people?
They might think that, oh, this is going to happen to me too, especially if I start hanging around him.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so it might be a personal fear. I took it differently. I mean, that's possible. I took it as they became afraid that they're wrong. They think that God only punishes you when you sin, but then you see someone like me who was totally righteous and I suffered. So you might now start questioning your beliefs, and so you think you're arguing against me because you believe that I'm wrong and you're right. But I think you're just arguing out of fear and insecurity. Like you're not really secure in your religious beliefs. And what happened to me kind of shattered your religious beliefs. That's how I'm taking it. But I mean, there's multiple ways to take it here. Okay, next. Ayala, you want to read? Fader?
Sure. Did I say, give me money, use your strength to fight me? Did I say, rescue me from my foes and ransom me from cruel men? Rather, I said, instruct me and I will remain silent. Help me understand how I have erred. How clear and self-evident is straightforward speech, but of what value is any explanation that comes from you? Do you think that words alone and vain talk are decisive proofs, or that illustrations are to be taken as prophecy?
Not illustrations.
illusions, sorry.
Illusions, yeah.
But they fall upon a defenseless orphan and create an obstacle for your friends. And now examine me anew. It may appear to you that I am fraudulent. Please consider. You will find no wrong. After that, consider once again, and you will see that righteousness is still within me. Is there a seed on my tongue? Does my palate not discern iniquity?
Now, you saw that I quoted that part earlier also because he's making a new point here as well. I quoted it twice because it's two different points. So what is he now accusing his friends of, or what is he demanding of his friends? And you got to think about it, remember, this is a response, right? So his Eliphaz said, you sinned, okay, and you're being punished. So what is Iyov now responding and demanding?
Like, give me a reason, like why?
Yeah, tell me why. Explain to me what I'm doing wrong. Like, show me where the error of my ways. So he's saying, give me knowledge. Don't just give me empty words and prophecies. Don't say, oh, God told me that you're doing wrong. Like, that's not any help. That's not helpful. Like, show me how I can actually, you tell me to do tshuva. So show me how to do tshuva. You tell me I sin, show me where I'm sinning. I haven't been mistreating anyone. I haven't been like, misusing my my wealth. And later on in the book, he goes back to that argument also. And he goes in and he lists like a bunch of stuff. Like he says, like, I never looked at any maiden inappropriately. I never like withheld tzedakah from people who needed it. And he like lists all these things and basically says, you guys are not helping me to figure out exactly what I'm doing wrong. It would be like if a teacher gave you a low score on your essay and didn't tell you what the feedback was or the critiques were, hypothetically. Yeah. All right. Don't look so afraid. Okay. All right. Next, Ayala Tarabella, you want to read?
Sure. Man's time on earth is limited. His days may be considered like those of a day laborer. If he were like a slave, he would long only for the shade of nightfall. But if he were like a contract laborer, he would long only to complete his assignment. I, however, have been allotted only months of emptiness, and these months were replete with nights of misery. When I lie down to sleep, I only think of my awakening, and by the time the night ends, I yearn impatiently for night to turn into day and day into night. My flesh is clothed with worms and clods of earth. My skin has cracked and dissolved. My days pass with the speed of a weaver's shuttle and end without hope.
Yeah, how does this make you feel about Iyov?
He's
Bad.
sad.
Poor guy, right? I mean, what point is he making here? What is he saying in your own words?
He's so miserable from like this
Yeah.
punishment.
It's just
Bad.
total misery. Nothing to look forward to. Okay, and then he goes on. All right, go ahead, Ayala.
Remember, my life consists only of my breath. My eyes will never turn to see the good. The eyes that looks for me will not find me. You will seek me out, but I will no longer be there. Just as a cloud that rises from decomposing matter dissipates, so does one who descends into the netherworld rise up no more. He can no longer return to his home. His former place will no longer recognize him.
Yeah. Okay. This is something that, remember, we're doing the Malbim here. Okay. Now the Malbim does hold that Iyov is Jewish. Okay. So if you look at this statement and the statement before it, which of the 13 Ikarim does it look like Iyov is denying here? That's a very leading question, but I wouldn't have noticed this if the Malbim didn't point it out.
I forgot which one it is, but that God is good, that he only does good.
Okay, that's definitely true also, but remember, he doesn't hold that God is doing this to him, right? So I'll give you a hint. Okay, let me read the key parts here. That man's time on earth is limited. Okay. My days pass with the speed of a weaver's shuttle and end without hope. My life consists only of my breath. My eyes will never return to see the good.
Oh, like
Yeah.
Chiyah Mason?
Chiyas Mesim. Okay, good. So Rashi says here, Zachor ki ruach hayai lo tashuv eini liros tov. Remember that my life is just my breath, and my eye will not return to see the good. So Rashi says, la'achar misa. That's referring lo tashuv einai la'achar misa. My eye will not return after death. V'kan kafar Iyov b'tchias mesim. And this is where we see that Iyov denied the resurrection of the dead. Okay, so again, I don't know if you said that Iyov is not Jewish, then this is not actually a problem, because there's no way to know about Tchias Mesim unless you get Nevuah. But according to the approach that Iyov is Jewish, then here he's denying Tchias Mesim. So this is his fifth point now, which is, you say that I'm being saved from eternal suffering. Well, there's no such thing, because once I'm dead, I'm dead. Okay, he's saying that the only life I have is this physical life. There's no reward in Olam Haba. There's no Tchias Mesim. So don't tell me that God is only doing this to save me from eternal suffering. There's no such thing. And this fits in with what we said before of Iyov, because he doesn't hold that there's any such thing as reward and punishment, because according to him, God is not involved with man's particular actions. Okay. So you see, by the way, the style here, he's going point by point with what Eliphaz says and just refuting each thing. Okay, and that's I think the style of how to learn his responses is you look at what points the friend is making, and then you look for how Iyov is responding to each one. Okay.
For his
Yes.
That kind of sounds like, if he doesn't believe in like Olam Haba or whatever, like an afterlife or whatever, then why isn't he just like ending it?
Right. So anyone remember how he answered that question? That why doesn't he just end it?
Because once someone like did this contradiction, he's so chasing after truth that he just like needs to figure out the answer before.
Yeah, is that he is a truth seeker, and he does want to know, he does want to understand things as clearly as possible, and to know that he's actually right. So he wants to finish this discussion to its conclusion, because if he is wrong, then that's really, really bad, you know? And he knows that his friends are intelligent, and so he wants to have this final like debate and conversation in order to see like whether he's right or they're right.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Okay, I think we're almost at the end of Eliphaz's refutation here. So who wants to read who hasn't read yet? If anyone? If not, we'll go back. Okay, let's go back to Leah. Oh, okay, yeah. Leah, and then for now, and then we'll go to Ayala. Yeah.
I do. I too will restrain my speech. I will speak
You will
out from
not
my
restrain
troubled
my
mind.
speech.
Oh, sorry, I'm not. I will speak out from my troubled mind and express myself from the bitterness of my spirit. Am I like the sea that must be confined, or a sea monster that must be restrained? I said that my sickbed would comfort me, or that my illness would speak for me, but you confused my spirit with dreams and terrified me with visions, so that my spirit would prefer to suffocate, to die rather than to live inside my body. I once despised the fact that I could not live forever, but now I plead with my life to depart from me, as my days are but vain emptiness.
Okay, sorry, one more.
What is man that you exalt him, that you turn your attention to him, that you inspect him every morning and observe him every moment? How long do you intend to pursue me so intently? Do you not even divert your attention from me for even the time it takes me to swallow my saliva? How can my sins possibly injure you? You fashioned man. Why then did you create me? I have become but a troublesome affliction to you and a burden to myself. Why do you take so long to bear the burden of my transgressions? And how long will you refrain from forgiving my sins? Wait a bit longer, and I will be lying under the ground. You may then search for me, but I will no longer exist.
Okay, now who is Iyov talking to in this paragraph?
God.
And what's weird about that?
He said he denied that God has any instrument.
Right, is that Iyov doesn't hold that God like knows what he's saying even, right? So how do you make sense of this? Like, why is Iyov talking to God, and also what point is he making to God?
Like, why did you wait until now to like just throw all these like sins, all these punishments at me?
Let me look at that for 1 second here. I don't quite see that in what you're saying. Are you getting that from a particular line, or you're getting that from his general position?
Like the line 21 where he's like, why do you take so long to bear the burden of my transgressions? How long will you refrain from forgiving my sins?
And say what you said again.
That like now it kind of seems like God is like just throwing all his punishments at Iyov all at once.
Yeah. Okay. I see how you're reading it. Yeah. I understood 21 differently. I thought it means that he means like, look, I'm already an old man. Like, just wait till I die. Like, don't punish me so harshly during my lifetime. Wait a bit longer, and I will be lying under the ground, and then I won't exist, and then you won't have any dealings with me anymore. But let's address the primary question though, of like, how can we make sense of him talking to God if according to him God doesn't understand him?
Is he just like questioning chance?
That's one possible way to take it. But he is saying, though, what is man that you exalt him, that you turn your attention to him, and you inspect him every morning and observe him every moment? How long do you intend to pursue me so intently? So he is talking about God as though he's observing his every like detail. So I think the only way to understand this is that it is it's like almost like a mockery. Okay, remember, because this is all part of his response to Eliphaz. So it's like, okay, I'll give a fake example. Like let's say I'm arguing with a Christian, okay, over whether Jesus is God or not, okay, and I want to argue against him, and I do it like sarcastically by saying, "Oh yeah, Jesus. Well, why did you go and get yourself crucified? Like, why did you do this? You know?" And I'm basically like mocking his beliefs by as if I'm responding to them. You know what I'm saying? So what he's saying here is he's basically saying like, oh yeah, so you Eliphaz claim that God watches over every detail. So God, why are you watching me so carefully? Like, why are you like even looking like at what time, you know, when I swallow my spittle? Like, why do you create me if you're just going to destroy me? So it's almost like, I mean, maybe another way to look at it is like what do you call it in Shakespeare? There's a monologue and there's a soliloquy, right? What's the difference? One of them is like
monologue. You're talking to yourself. Like,
yeah.
You're not talking.
So then what's the soliloquy then?
I don't think they're like opposite terms. I think soliloquy.
I thought one of them is like you are talking alone, but like you're in the crowd, but then the other one's like a hypothetical, like you're like thinking out loud. I don't know. This is why I don't teach literature, but okay. So the point is he is denying hashgacha pratis. That's what he's doing, but he's doing it in a mocking way, saying, why would God care about my sins? Why is he like pursuing me so much? Why is he like watch my spittle get swallowed? So he's basically like denying Eliphaz's assertion that this is all hashgacha pratis. Okay, and then last, that's it. Okay, we have a couple more points after this, but that's the end of Eliphaz's response. So how would you summarize, let me go back. How would you summarize his entire response here?
First of all, I really did not sin. Like, please inspect my actions and find where I did.
Good.
This can't be like a punishment from God because I can't do tshuva for it. So
okay,
it
good.
Be...
I mean, the way I see it. Oh, let me see what I wrote, and then I'll say I'll go to you. I am a tzaddik. I can't do tshuva, and you're harming me and not helping me. There's no afterlife. It's ridiculous to say God cares about my actions. Okay, so that's basically like a list of the things. The way I view those like in two halves, though. There's I can't do tshuva because I'm suffering too much and I didn't do anything wrong. And I deny everything you're saying. I deny your premises that there's an afterlife, that there's hashgacha, and that God cares about my actions. So like one statement is more about him. The other statement is more about like Eliphaz's claims about God. Okay.
You have like a slide where you like take each one of Eliphaz's points and show how he like count like his argument against
how it counters it. No, I actually don't, but that would be useful. Maybe I'm gonna try and remember to do that for next week. I'll just put them side by side so you can see how he responds. Okay. However, there are additional problems with Eliphaz's view. This is not contained in Eliphaz's view, but this is like my own addition to this. Okay. So first of all, if you notice it, Eliphaz has contradictory standards. Okay. Because he says, Iyov, if you were righteous, you wouldn't be punished. But then he also said that it's impossible to be so righteous that you don't deserve punishments. Because he said, who even gets punished? Even the angels get punished, and they're not good enough. So in other words, it's a contradiction. He's saying that Iyov could have avoided it if he was righteous enough, but then he's simultaneously saying there's no way you can be so righteous that you wouldn't get punished. Does that make sense? I mean, does his thing make sense? But you see how it's a contradiction? Yeah. Okay. Kind of like people, right? There's some people who are such nitpickers that there's nothing you could do. There's no way to please them, you know? So if you have someone who it's impossible to please, then it doesn't make sense to say, well, if you were only a little bit better, then they wouldn't criticize you. No, they're always going to criticize you. So like, what's the point? All right. Number two, are you familiar, actually, before I say this, are you familiar with the concept of burden of proof in logic? Oh yeah, Emily, you would know this. You want to explain burden of proof?
It's like it's like you have to know beyond a reasonable doubt, like your proof. I know we use it in mock trial.
Yeah, you use it in mock trial, right? Anyone else know?
It's like the burden of proof of like oh, you have the burden of proof, meaning that you have.
Yeah, so the burden of proof is something that is assigned, okay, that who has the burden of proof. So meaning whose responsibility is it to prove this, and whose responsibility is it who does not have the responsibility to prove anything? So who does have a burden of proof in any argument?
The person who's claiming to know something is
the person who's claiming to know something, right? So in other words, if I say, I can't go up to you and say ghosts exist and it's up to you to prove that they don't exist. No, that doesn't make sense. The person who claims that ghosts exist is the one who has the burden of proof to prove it. People who don't make the claim, they don't have to prove anything or disprove anything, okay? So same thing in like, I mean, you could say it in the American system, innocent until proven guilty, right? If I claim that you committed a crime, it's not like that creates an obligation for you to defend yourself. No, I'm the one who has to support my claim that you're guilty, okay? So here, the burden of proof is on Eliphaz to show that no tzaddik has ever been unjustly perished, right? Eliphaz made the statement, there's no tzaddik who has ever died without being guilty of something, okay? So Eliphaz can't just say that, he has to actually prove it, okay? In other words, the evidence is really on the side of Iyov, because Iyov can look, I mean, Iyov is looking at himself and saying, look, I'm righteous and I've suffered, you know, you're the one who's making this claim that there's no one who ever suffers unjustly. And furthermore, how do you know that? Like, have you done a survey of all people in all of history and like done a righteousness assessment to see like how many sins they did, you know? So like, don't make this proof. I'm sorry, don't make this claim if you're not going to support it. And then the last one is gonna segue into English. Okay, so just a side point about English. So we are going to start doing argument essays in about a week. Okay, we're still going to do rhetorical analysis, but we're doing argument. And one of the things we're going to do for argument is talk about logical fallacies. Okay, now I know that some of you know what logical fallacies are because you wrote about them in your essays. Okay, but what is a logical fallacy?
A fault in reason.
A fault in reasoning. Okay, good. So there is a faulty. So let me tell you the statement. Okay, and you tell me if you know what logical fallacy this is. And if you don't know it, it's not a big deal because this is a hard to know one. Okay, so Eliphaz says, if you just find one person who is righteous and who suffered, then I'll admit that you're right.
That's generalization.
No, I mean he is generalizing, but that's not a fallacy though. Like all knowledge is also generalization, you know.
It's not a fallacy?
Generalization is not a fallacy. Hasty generalization is a fallacy, or generalization based on too few particulars. Generalization is knowledge, right? When you say that all water is comprised of H2O, that's a generalization, you know.
I thought generalization is like you take one example and you use it as like the.
Oh, so I think people call that hasty generalization, meaning when you are too quick to make a universal based on a particular. Yeah, because generalization is not. There's nothing inherently wrong with generalization. That's what knowledge is, or that's what definitions are. Okay, so have you ever heard of the no true? Okay, I'm calling this the no true tzaddik fallacy. Have you ever heard of the no true Scotsman fallacy? Okay, so let me show you what it is. Hold on. Did I do this out of order? Wait a minute. Oh, hold on a second here. Okay, so Oh yeah, so I'll show you in Iyov and then the fallacy, and I'll go back to Iyov. So Eliphaz claimed that a person only suffers if he sinned, and tells Iyov that if he's suffering, then he must not be a tzaddik. And then Eliphaz tells Iyov, name just one tzaddik who has been unjustly punished. Okay, so what's the fallacy? It is the no true Scotsman fallacy. So here's what the no true Scotsman fallacy is. Okay, making what. Okay, I don't necessarily like this way of formulating it. This is not my graphic here. Making what could be called an appeal to purity as a way to dismiss relevant criticisms or flaws of argument. Okay, I'll explain it in a second. In this form of faulty reasoning, one's belief is rendered unfalsifiable because no matter how compelling the evidence is, one simply shifts the goalposts so that it wouldn't apply to a supposedly true example. So here's the classical example. Okay, it says no true. This is from Wikipedia, I think. No true Scotsman is an informal fallacy, an ad hoc attempt to retain an unreasoned assertion. When faced with a counterexample to a universal claim, for example, no Scotsman would do such a thing, rather than denying the counterexample or rejecting the original universal claim, this fallacy modifies the subject of the assertion to exclude the specific case or others like it by rhetoric without reference to any specific objective rule. No true Scotsman would do such a thing. So here's let me say it in plainer English. Maybe the example. Yeah, here's the example at the bottom, right? Angus declares that Scotsmen do not put sugar on their porridge, to which Lachlan points out that he is a Scotsman. He is a Scotsman and he puts sugar on his porridge. Furious, like a true Scot, Angus yells, "Well, no true Scotsman sugars his porridge." So it's basically when you make a claim about an entire group, okay, or you make a universal claim and you say everyone does this. And then someone tries to disprove it by showing an example that goes against the proof. And you basically say, well, that's not a real example. Does that make sense? Or let me give you another example. Okay, if I make the statement, I'll use the black swans example. If I say all swans are white, okay, and then you show me a black swan, okay, so on the surface, that would disprove my claim. Okay, so what would be an example of me committing the no true Scotsman fallacy to deal with your counterexample?
Yeah, well, that's not actually a swan. That's
not actually a swan. Okay. Right. Or let's say here's another example is the argument. So socialists will argue that socialism is the best system. Right. And capitalists or anti-socialists will say, well, if you look at all the examples of socialism in history, they've all failed. So what would the socialists often respond?
They didn't do it right.
They didn't do it right. Those weren't real examples of socialism, but if we had a real example, then you would see. So it's a fallacy because it's unfalsifiable. You're making a claim, and then the way claims are supposed to work is you make a claim, and if someone brings a case that is contrary to your claim, so then it's supposed to disprove your claim. But if you just brush it off by saying it's not a real example, then that's a fallacy. So here's how Eliphaz is doing it. He's saying like this: recall, please, the name of just one innocent person who has perished, or a place where the righteous have been annihilated. Where does Iyov then respond to that? What was Iyov's response?
Me.
And how does Eliphaz respond to that?
Oh, you're not a
No, you're not a true.
It must be you're not really righteous. You're not a true tzaddik, okay? So this is a fallacy because no matter what Iyov says, Eliphaz will never accept it. So Eliphaz's claim, he tries to bring proof, oh, name me one person who's a tzaddik and who suffered unjustly. It's unfalsifiable because any example that you bring up, then Eliphaz is just going to deny, say, oh, well, he must not have been righteous. So that's a fallacy.
In some sense,
a true tzaddik would get punishment.
Say it again, Leah.
And he even said Eliphaz's argument even holds that a tzaddik completely would still get punishment because there is no such thing as a true tzaddik.
Exactly right. Yeah, there's no such thing as a true tzaddik, right? So that really was my actually. So they pair really well. In other words, hold on. Let me go back. So really, I should have really reversed these two, which is, or I should put number one at the end, because he's saying, show me one example of a true tzaddik who is still suffering unjustly. So problem number one is any example you show him, then he'll just say he must not be a true tzaddik. And then if you ask him what is a true tzaddik, he'll have to admit, I don't hold that there is such thing as a true tzaddik because even angels are not true tzaddikim, So it is unfalsifiable for two reasons. That's a good point. Okay.
In a sense, this cannot be a fallacy. Like there is some truth to it.
Well, here's the thing, though, is that unless you define what you mean by tzaddik, or unless you define what you mean by suffering, then you're not actually making a claim. You know, if you define
Right,
your
you have
claim
to define.
precisely, you know, so you are right, Ayala, that we hold that like everything that happens in the world is in line with justice, you know, but Eliphaz is just dodging Iyov's counterexample just in order to maintain his own statement as being right. He's not actually defining anything. So, you know, if you wrote down on paper, you know, what a tzaddik is, then that can actually lead to proof or disproof, you know. But if it's something that if it's a theory that explains everything, then it really is explaining nothing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I think we're going to do is I know it's a little bit early. Let's stop here. Okay. And let's start class at 11:35 because we have a lot to cover. Okay. For English. But this is the end of Eliphaz. Okay. So I'll see you at 11:35.
Thank you.
I'm going to stay in the room. Yeah.